Hello everyone. Today what we're going to talk about is getting started with the Jaspersoft commercial trial. I'll of course point out if this UI looks a little different than the download page for Jaspersoft, then there's probably going to be a few minor differences, but still some important points to be covered. So the first thing I'd like to point out is the biggest thing I like to point out is that with this 60-day trial, there's two pieces I typically recommend you download. The first one is going to be the Jaspersoft BI Enterprise Edition tab. This is the actual server that you're going to be deploying, and these are the options that we give you. The first thing I'll point out is that we have a install guide that you can follow. The second thing I'm going to point out is since it's a trial, is meant to only be installed on the default database, which is Postgres. So for an implementation purpose, if you are trying to evaluate it with a different database other than Postgres, you're going to need to reach out to a sales rep in order to get the full edition of Jaspersoft, such as hosting on Oracle or Microsoft SQL. The second thing I'll point out is that within this download there's a second tab, and this is going to be the Jaspersoft Studio Professional Edition. The reason I recommend downloading this as well is this is the desktop designer, or the Jaspersoft Studio, or iReport as it used to be known as, that most of the development is done, especially on the Community Edition. If you're used to that, then you're going to want to download this. So make sure you download both. I'll actually talk about how both of them connect to each other in just a second. But the first thing I wanted to point out is before we start logging in to both of these, that there is an option for cloud server. If you want to host on AWS, we have a AWS page that will help you with CloudFormation templates. That'll make it easy for you to deploy to whatever cloud service you want to under the AWS server. And of course, any of the links that are shown today are going to be included in the video description. So with that, once you've downloaded your server, you're going to be able to log in. Typically, the default is going to be Jasper admin, and the exact same thing for the password. Don't mind mine being a little different. The second thing I'll point out is if you want to use another language to be supported, that can be changed here with any of the languages we have out of the box. The second thing I'll point out is that we have different time zones that you can base this information off of. So with that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is you could log in there, and you're going to have full administrative access under the Jasper admin user in order to see and look at information, to create reports, and connect to your data sources. So next thing I'm going to do is kind of switch over to the desktop designer really quick. And the one thing I'm going to want to point out here is that once you open the studio, the one thing you're going to want to do is connect to your actual server. That way you can take reports that you've built and deploy them in. So to do that, you're going to click on this plus button right here. You're going to name your server, point it to the URL, and give it a username and password. That's going to be that Jasper admin password and user that you have available. You'll just test the connection and click finish. I'll actually show you an example of what mine looks like here, just to show that that's how that would work. So switching back over to the web, I'm going to go ahead and end with a pointer on where to train. So the one thing I want to point out is that we have an entire community site at community.jaspersoft.com that has everything from starting tutorials to information on certain use cases and reports and features and functionalities. The important ones I'll highlight, of course, is the Jaspersoft Studio training. Notice that there are some differences in that commercial edition, which is why we recommend that you download both for the full evaluation. The second thing I'll talk about is the Visualize.js. So they both have dedicated pages for wikis, tutorials that you can click on and interact with, even some coding samples if you're going to be going on the embedded side. So with that, that's really all I wanted to cover today. Hopefully this helps you in getting started with the Jaspersoft tutorial.